Hey Reddit, I never thought I'd be that guy writing one of these posts, but here we are. I'm still wrapping my head around everything, but maybe getting it all out here will help. I'm a 32-year-old guy married to my wife, Sophie, 29F, for almost 5 years. We don't have kids, thank God. You'll understand why soon. And I thought we were doing okay until a few months ago when things started to feel off. It wasn't some dramatic change at first, just little things. She was glued to her phone more than usual, quick to lock it whenever I walked into the room. She started dressing up more, even when we weren't going anywhere. She was colder, not mean exactly, but distant. At first, I thought maybe she was just stressed. She's always been a bit high strung and dramatic, but I chalked it up to work stuff. Then came the weird excuses. She suddenly started ordering in a lot when I was working late or stuck commuting home in traffic, and always from the same local pizza place. I didn't think much of it. She loves pizza, always has. But she started refusing to eat the same pizza if I brought it home for us to share. It's too greasy, she'd say, or I'm trying to eat healthy right after she'd ordered the exact same thing the night before. Weird, right? But I didn't push it. I didn't want to seem controlling or paranoid. After all, what guy accuses his wife of having an affair with the pizza delivery guy? It sounds like the plot of a bad adult film. I kept telling myself I was imagining things, that I was tired, that maybe I was the one letting the relationship go stale. So I started planning little surprises, flowers, date nights, cooking dinner, and she'd either fake being grateful or roll her eyes like I was being cheesy. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. I just didn't know yet how wrong things would get. So this is where things really started to unravel. It was a Tuesday, nothing special. I was stuck in traffic for over an hour thanks to an accident on the highway. I texted Sophie to let her know I'd be late. No response. Not even a K. Whatever. I didn't think much of it. But then I remembered I had left my work laptop at home that morning, something I never do. I needed it for a Zoom call the next day, so I turned around and headed back. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something weird. There was a black Honda Civic parked across the street. It wasn't one of our neighbor's cars, just sitting there, engine running, no driver inside. I felt a little uneasy, but figured it might be a DoorDash or something. I let myself in quietly. The house was oddly quiet. Too quiet. Then I heard it. A laugh, her laugh, coming from upstairs. At first, I froze. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me didn't want to know, but then came the voice that wasn't hers. A male voice. And not just talking either, the kind of low chuckle that only comes out when someone's very comfortable in your house. My legs moved before my brain did. I walked up the stairs slowly, heartbeat pounding in my ears, and that's when I heard her say it. You better be quick. He said he's stuck in traffic. My stomach dropped. I stood outside our bedroom door for a second, and I could hear them moving inside. No need to explain what kind of movement. I felt like the floor might swallow me whole. I didn't burst in. I couldn't. I just turned around, walked downstairs, and left. Drove around for hours. Didn't answer her texts. They started coming in around 9 p.m. Where are you? Are you okay? Traffic that bad. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed proof. I needed a plan. And most of all, I needed to not break down before I figured out exactly what the hell was going on. I wish I could say I calmly planned my next move like some kind of tactical genius. But truthfully, I was a mess. I didn't sleep that night. I laid on the couch in my car with the engine off, watching my breath fog up the windows. I kept replaying what I'd heard in my head. Her voice, his voice, the bed creaking, the casual tone like this wasn't even the first time, like she had done it before, like this was routine. The next morning, I walked back into the house like nothing happened. She was in the kitchen, already dressed, sipping coffee like it was just another Wednesday. Hey, babe, she said, barely looking at me. Traffic sucked, huh? I nodded. Said nothing. She gave me a weird look. You okay? I was note. Didn't sleep well, she rolled her eyes. You never sleep well anymore. Maybe you should stop drinking so much caffeine. No apology, no guilt. She just kept lying. Smooth, casual, like she'd practiced this 100 times in the mirror. That weekend, I told her I had a work meeting across town. Instead, I parked around the block and waited. Sure enough, 15 minutes after I left, a black Honda Civic pulled into our driveway, pizza box in hand. Same guy. Same guy. I took photos. I even recorded a short video. I watched him walk in the front door like he owned the place. I watched her greet him at the door in one of my shirts, the same shirt I bought her on our honeymoon. I left again. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but I knew if I did it while I was that angry, I'd regret it. So I waited. I waited until she got home from yoga on Sunday. I sat her down on the couch. Me. You seeing someone? Sophie. What? No. What are you even talking about? The pizza guy? Her face turned white for half a second, just long enough for me to see it. Then the performance kicked in. Sophie, are you fucking serious right now? You think I'd cheat on you with a delivery guy? What kind of sick fantasy is that? I pulled out my phone, played the video. Silent. Just her opening the door, hugging him, pulling him in. She flipped, instantly turned it into my fault. Sophie, so you're spying on me now? You're sick, you know that? You've been distant for months. What was I supposed to do? You treat me like a roommate. I needed something. It wasn't even an apology, not even a denial after the footage. Just blame, screaming, hysterics. Then came the waterworks. It didn't mean anything. It was just once. Liar. It was a mistake. I swear. I love you, liar. She stormed out after I told her I needed space to think. I didn't need space. I needed a lawyer. I think I went numb. After she stormed out that night, I sat in silence for hours. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat there, like my body didn't know what to do without her lies to bounce off of. It's a strange thing when someone you love becomes a stranger in real time. One minute, she's your wife, the woman you laughed with, traveled with, talked about growing old with, and the next, she's a manipulative stranger who's been sleeping with the guy who brings XX marinara sauce on request. And you start questioning everything. Was that weekend in the cabin a lie? Was she texting him during our anniversary dinner? Was she ever truly into me? Or just biding her time until something more exciting delivered itself to the door? I didn't go to work the next day. I called in sick, which wasn't even a lie. I felt like I had a virus in my soul. I walked around the house and realized how many things were ours. The bed, the couch, the photo of us in Rome on the bookshelf, where I now realized she was already pulling away in the frame. The worst part? There were no kids, no shared business, no big entanglements. You'd think that would make it easier, but it actually made it harder because it meant she stayed with me by choice and still chose to betray me. She came back that night, eyes puffy and dramatic like she'd just finished binge watching sad movies or practicing her tears in the mirror. She dropped to the couch like she owned the place. "We need to talk," she said, voice trembling just enough to sound tragic. I didn't even look at her. I made a mistake. It was the attention. I just felt invisible. Translation: you didn't worship me 24/7, so I had sex with a guy who brings cheese breadsticks. She kept going. Excuses. Deflections. It didn't mean anything. I thought you were losing interest. You're always so emotionally unavailable. She flipped the blame like it was reflex. I told her I needed time to think. She said she was going to stay at her friend's. But I know where she really went. I could see it in her eyes. And somehow, I was still torn. Not because I wanted her back, but because I didn't recognize her anymore. And that haunted me. How did the woman I married become this cruel, dishonest, narcissistic person? And how the hell didn't I see it sooner? 3 days. That's how long I waited. Not because I had hope, not because I wanted to forgive her, but because I needed to be absolutely sure I was done. And I was. She texted, she called, she even emailed me like it was a damn job interview. All the same recycled phrases. Please talk to me. I made a mistake. We can fix this. Then came the emotional grenades. You're just going to throw away everything? You said forever. You're heartless. You don't even care about us. Us. That word had stopped meaning anything the moment she let another man walk into our home and into our bed like it was a motel room. So I did it. I called a lawyer, filed for divorce, didn't even hesitate when they asked for grounds, adultery. She showed up at the house unannounced that evening, banging on the door like a lunatic, screaming through the wood. You're divorcing me? Really? Yes, really. She stormed in, refused to leave. I had to threaten to call the cops before she finally backed off. Not before throwing the nearest vase across the living room, though. Classic. You're weak. You're pathetic. You're just doing this to hurt me. Lady, you did that all by yourself. Her final words before slamming the door. You'll regret this. No one will love you like I did. You mean lie to me like you did? Cheat on me like you did? Manipulate me like you did? Hard pass. The next morning, I changed the locks, closed our joint bank account, and blocked her on everything. I told her lawyer to communicate through mine. No more games, no more guilt tripping, no more her. And the moment I signed those divorce papers, I felt free. Not sad, not relieved, just done. There's more to the story, and believe me, things got even messier after that, but that was the moment I took my life back. So you'd think the drama might start winding down after the divorce papers were filed. Wrong. That's when Sophie went full scorched earth. First, she started the smear campaign, texting mutual friends, spinning some half baked story about how I emotionally abandoned her and drove her into someone else's arms. Classic gaslighting. Some of our more gullible acquaintances ate it up at first. A few even messaged me like I had some explaining to do. Thankfully, I had the receipts, screenshots, video, call logs. And once I shared the truth with a few key people, her whole web of lies started to unravel fast. One of her own best friends even texted me, I can't believe I defended her. She's completely lost it. But Sophie wasn't done. She started showing up to my office. Once in the parking lot, once at the front desk pretending to drop off important paperwork. It was a damn Starbucks napkin with "Call me" written on it in pink pen. Then she messaged my mother. That was the final straw. My mom, who always tried to like her, who baked for her, defended her, trusted her, called me in tears because Sophie claimed I was being cruel and abandoning her during a mental health crisis. Really? You cheat on your husband, lie about it, throw a vase at him, and now you're the victim? Then came the cherry on top. I got a call from a random number one night. It was him, the pizza guy. Hey man, I just wanted to talk. I didn't know she was married at first. I laughed. You didn't know or you didn't care? He stammered. She told me you were separated. Of course she did. He apologized, said she'd been a lot, and that things had already gone sour between them. Apparently, she'd been love bombing him too, making him promises, getting clingy, controlling, jealous. Sound familiar? I thanked him for the info, then hung up. Honestly, he was just another victim. Naive, maybe, but not the villain in this story. Sophie, meanwhile, continued spiraling. The best part? She tried to reverse the divorce, filed some kind of bizarre motion claiming I'd acted in haste and that we should attempt mediation. My lawyer laughed out loud reading it. We rejected it immediately. I had my spine back, my dignity, and soon I'd have my freedom. To be continued. After months of drama, lies, and emotional warfare, I finally started feeling like myself again. Actually, not myself, a new version of me. One who wasn't constantly walking on eggshells or wondering if a smile was real or calculated. Someone who could breathe without the weight of a ticking time bomb in the other room. I focused on rebuilding. I hit the gym hard. Not for revenge. Not for some cliche revenge body. I did it because I needed something I could control. Something that made me stronger, physically and mentally. I started eating better, sleeping better, reading again, seeing friends without guilt-tripping texts blowing up my phone. I even deleted every trace of Sophie from my phone. Photos, messages, videos. Gone. Like she'd never existed. Then something unexpected happened. I ran into Emma. Emma was someone I used to work with years ago. We were just acquaintances back then. Friendly chats in the break room, shared jokes during team meetings, nothing romantic. But when I saw her again at a local bookstore, yeah, I'd started reading again, Sumi, something clicked. She smiled like someone who hadn't been trained to weaponize affection. We chatted for 20 minutes in the aisle, laughing about how terrible our old boss was, catching up on life. She mentioned she'd gotten out of a long-term relationship the year before, said she'd taken a break from dating to work on herself. I respected that. When she asked how I'd been, I didn't lie. I told her I'd recently filed for divorce and that it had been messy. She didn't flinch. She just nodded and said, sometimes fire clears the field so better things can grow. God damn, that hit harder than I expected. We exchanged numbers and we've texted a few times since. Nothing serious. No rushing, just refreshing. For the first time in what felt like years, I wasn't being managed emotionally. I was just me, and that was enough. Of course, just when I thought things were finally calming down, something else happened. Something that would drag Sophie back into my life, like a shadow that refuses to stay buried. Just when I thought I had finally stepped out of the storm, bam, Sophie dragged me right back into it. It started with a letter, not a text, not a phone call, a physical letter delivered to my apartment. No return address. Her handwriting. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity got the better of me. It was a single sheet of paper. You need to talk to me. It's serious. I swear it's not drama. Please. I ignored it, threw it in the trash. 2 days later, my lawyer forwarded me an email from her attorney. Subject, time sensitive, urgent legal matter. And there it was. Sophie was claiming she might be pregnant. I laughed out loud in my kitchen. Full, unhinged laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was so Sophie. Of course, right when I was moving on, right when I was starting to heal, she'd pull this. The timeline didn't even make sense. We hadn't slept together in months before the affair, and she'd been with her pizza guy longer than she admitted. This was her last grenade. I called my lawyer. Me, she's lying 100%. Lawyer, will request proof. Don't say a word to her directly. Of course, Sophie didn't provide any medical records, just more vague threats. You're going to regret ignoring me. This could change everything. Nope, it didn't. A week later, she admitted via her lawyer that she'd had a false alarm. No apology, no explanation, just a quiet withdrawal of her claim. I wasn't even angry. I was exhausted. She tried to use a baby as a manipulation tactic, a literal human life as leverage, and still thought she could somehow claw her way back into my world. After that, I blocked her lawyer too. My attorney would handle everything from here on out. And Emma? She was still around, still texting, still her calm, warm, no nonsense self. When I told her about the fake pregnancy thing, she blinked once and said, "Yeah, you dodged a bullet. No drama, no pity, just truth." I was starting to realize what it felt like to be around someone stable. But Sophie wasn't done. The next hit was coming, and this one wouldn't be a fake. This one would be real. Right when I thought Sophie's fake pregnancy was her last sad attempt at relevance, life decided to throw me another curveball. This time, not from Sophie, but from someone else entirely. It was a Friday night. I just finished a workout, made dinner, and was planning to binge watch something mindless when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I ignored it. Then came a text. "Hey, you don't know me, but I think we should talk. It's about Sophie." Here we go again, I thought. I replied, "Who is this?" "My name's Mia. I'm her half-sister." Wait, what? I'd never even heard Sophie mention a half-sister, and we were married for 4 years. I asked for proof. She sent a selfie, and I nearly dropped my phone. She looked exactly like Sophie, only softer, kinder eyes, same cheekbones, but the opposite energy. We talked. Mia told me she'd been estranged from Sophie for years. Different moms, same deadbeat dad. They'd tried reconnecting recently, and Sophie had, well, unloaded everything on her. And guess what? Turns out Sophie had a history. Multiple affairs, multiple emotional breakdowns, manipulative patterns going back to college, even faking a suicide attempt to keep an ex from leaving. I didn't know whether to scream or laugh. Mia wasn't calling to warn me, though. She was calling to apologize on behalf of the family. She's always been like this. I just didn't know how bad it got until I heard about what she did to you. We talked for an hour, and somehow it felt like closure I didn't know I needed. For years, I thought I just failed in my marriage, that maybe I wasn't attentive enough, or too passive, or not exciting. But now I realized it wouldn't have mattered who I was. Sophie was always going to implode. She just needed a target. And I'd been the unlucky one in the blast zone. Mia and I haven't spoken since. She said her piece, I said mine, and that was that. But it hit me hard, because it proved what I'd been suspecting for a while. Sophie's chaos wasn't an accident. It was a pattern. And patterns don't break unless you get the hell out. Good thing I already had, but she still wasn't done. Because the next message I got was from her parents, and they weren't reaching out to defend their daughter, they were reaching out to me. So yeah, Sophie's parents reached out to me, totally out of the blue. I hadn't seen or spoken to them since the divorce proceedings started, and I assumed they were siding with their daughter. I mean, that's what parents usually do, right? Wrong. It started with an email from her dad, subject, "I owe you an apology." I stared at it for a solid 10 minutes before opening it. Here's part of what he wrote. We've recently learned about what Sophie did, and frankly, we're disgusted. We were kept in the dark about your divorce. She told us you had cheated and that you left her with no warning. She what? I had to pace around the apartment. I shouldn't have been surprised, but something about seeing it in writing just sent a fresh wave of rage through me. She lied to her own parents, made herself the victim, and they'd believed it for almost a year. Then her mom emailed me separately. Hers was shorter, but somehow even more brutal. We are deeply sorry. I won't excuse her behavior. She's been like this since she was a teenager. We enabled it for far too long. Apparently, Sophie's own family was starting to realize what I had lived through for years. They asked if I'd be willing to meet them for coffee, not to get involved again, not to stir drama, but just to talk, to understand, to apologize. I went. I met them at a small cafe near where they lived. It was awkward at first, but then her mom broke the silence. We lost you because we didn't ask questions, and we lost the version of Sophie we raised a long time ago. Her dad added, if it's any consolation, you weren't the only one she hurt. They told me stories, ones that matched what Mia had shared. Sophie had burned friendships, manipulated teachers, faked illnesses for attention. Her chaos didn't start with me. It just peaked with me. And honestly, hearing it from them, it didn't bring joy. It brought sadness, deep, quiet sadness, because I realized I had loved someone who never really existed. The version of Sophie I married was just the mask. They said one more thing before we left that stuck with me. She needs help, but we're done making excuses for her. We shook hands. I thanked them. We went our separate ways. On the walk home, I felt something heavy lift off my shoulders, like I wasn't crazy after all, like I'd been seen. But as fate would have it, that peace wouldn't last long. Because guess who decided to show up on my doorstep the next day? Yup, Sophie. I wasn't expecting visitors. It was Saturday morning. I was in sweatpants halfway through my second cup of coffee when I heard a knock at the door. I assumed it was a delivery. Maybe Amazon, maybe groceries. It wasn't. It was Sophie, standing there like nothing happened, sunglasses on, hair messy, clutching her phone in one hand and a tote bag like she was just stopping by for brunch. I didn't open the door fully, just cracked it enough to say, "What are you doing here?" She smiled, actually smiled. "Can we talk?" I laughed. Couldn't help it. "You have nothing to say that I want to hear." Her expression changed instantly. The mask slipped. "Don't be like that. I'm trying to fix this." Fix what exactly? The marriage she nuked, the lies, the fake pregnancy stunt, sleeping with a guy who brings garlic knots for a living. I started to close the door, but she shoved her foot in. I'm not kidding. Full-on rom-com moment turned horror movie. "You owe me 5 minutes." Owe her? That's when I snapped. I stepped outside and shut the door behind me so she couldn't get in. I kept my voice low, not for her sake, but for mine. "Sophie, we are done. You cheated. You lied. You manipulated everyone around you, even your own parents. You do not get to show up here unannounced and pretend this is some Nicholas Sparks story waiting for a rewrite." She stared at me, blinking like she couldn't process that someone was actually standing up to her. Then she went into full meltdown mode. "You're so dramatic. I made a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. You think you're so perfect?" Then came the tears, the fake, practiced kind. "I miss us. I don't know who I am without you." Classic Sophie. When rage doesn't work, turn on the waterworks. When that fails, start gaslighting. I told her she needed to leave before I called the cops. She finally backed off, but not before leaving me with one last parting shot. "You'll regret this. You're going to end up alone, and no one will ever love you the way I did." Thank God for that. She stormed off. I went back inside, locked the door, and sat down shaking. Not from fear, but from adrenaline. Because I realized that for the first time in years, I had finally won a confrontation with her. I hadn't caved. I hadn't played the emotional hostage. I stood my ground. And for the first time in forever, I felt free. But Sophie wasn't done just yet. She had one more game to play, and it involved someone new, someone I never expected to be dragged into this. I should have known Sophie wouldn't go quietly. I figured after our last confrontation, the one where I told her to get off my porch or I'd call the cops, she'd finally get the message. That maybe, just maybe, she'd move on and let it all die out. Nope. Instead, she decided to burn other people on her way down. starting with Mia. For those who haven't read the earlier parts, Mia's my longtime friend, and to be honest, one of the few people who stayed neutral and supportive through everything. She was there when I hit rock bottom. She never took sides, even though she knew Sophie was toxic. Well, apparently Sophie blamed her for all of it. A few days after our porch showdown, Mia called me, voice shaking. You're not going to believe this, but Sophie showed up at my job. Mia works at a small boutique downtown. Sophie walked in, made a scene in front of customers, and accused her of stealing her husband. Loudly, publicly. She screamed things like, "You always wanted him. You're just a snake pretending to be a friend. He wouldn't have left me if you didn't poison him against me." Security had to escort her out. I was mortified. I immediately texted Sophie and said, "If you ever harass my friends again, I will take legal action." Her response? "You're blind. She's been after you for years. I just finally saw it." Let's be clear, Mia and I have never been anything more than friends. I was married. She respected that, and even after everything fell apart, she never crossed that line. Sophie's delusion wasn't just sad, it was dangerous. But that wasn't the only person she tried to drag down. She called my boss. Yeah, you read that right. Sophie actually called my workplace and tried to tell HR that I had been emotionally abusive to her and a danger to others. She even emailed screenshots of random arguments we had back in 2022, completely out of context, obviously, and tried to claim I was unstable. Luckily, my boss knew the situation already. He pulled me aside, showed me the email, and said, "Don't worry, this is clearly personal drama, but you might want to get a restraining order." I felt like I was trapped in some twisted Lifetime movie. That weekend, I filed for a temporary restraining order. I had texts, witness statements, and now a record of her showing up to multiple locations to stir chaos. The judge granted it. Finally, a win. A real one. But even then, I couldn't fully relax. I kept wondering what would be her next move. She'd already weaponized lies, fake pregnancies, harassment, and now public humiliation. What was left? Well, turns out she had one last surprise in store, and this one was truly unhinged. After the restraining order was granted, I thought I'd finally get some peace. I was wrong. It started with silence. A few days with no texts, no sudden appearances, no chaotic messages. I almost began to relax. Then I got an email from an anonymous address with the subject line, "You should know who you're dealing with." I opened it. Inside were a dozen attachments, photos of me, at work, at the gym, at the grocery store. Nothing compromising, but all clearly taken without my knowledge. Different days, different angles, different outfits. Someone had been following me. I felt my stomach drop. It wasn't hard to guess who was behind it. But then came the real twist. The next morning, I woke up to a series of calls from unknown numbers. I ignored them at first until one voicemail made my blood run cold. It was from a woman claiming to be from Child Protective Services. She said she needed to discuss allegations of abuse against a minor living in my home. Problem is, I don't have kids. Never did. Sophie and I were child-free by choice, so I called the number back thinking it was some kind of scam. Nope, it was real. Someone had filed a false report saying I had been seen hitting a small child and was known to keep minors in unsafe conditions. I told the agent everything, gave her the restraining order, gave her Sophie's full name. She understood immediately. She told me, sadly, that this happens more often than it should. Vengeful exes trying to weaponize the system. But the fact that she would go that far, faking abuse, involving imaginary children, just to ruin me, that was it. I went back to court, this time not just for a restraining order, but for a permanent one. I brought everything, emails, texts, CPS report. My lawyer was a bulldog, and the judge didn't take kindly to her behavior. The court granted a permanent no contact order. She's forbidden from contacting me, my family, or anyone connected to me in any way. Violation would result in immediate jail time. And just like that, the storm finally began to clear. No more Sophie, no more games, just silence, but I was left with the wreckage of everything she tried to destroy. The trust, the calm, the version of me that used to believe in love without suspicion. And yet, despite all that, I was finally free. Or so I thought. There was still one thing left to do, the divorce hearing. And that didn't go down quietly either. The final hearing, the divorce. After months of madness, this was supposed to be the end. A clean cut, a gavel bang, and I'd walk out free. But of course, with Sophie, nothing is ever that simple. We were scheduled for 10 a.m. at the county courthouse. I arrived early, dressed neatly, calm, collected. My lawyer was with me, organized and ready to finalize what should have been a simple, uncontested divorce. No kids, no shared property beyond a few assets, which I was more than willing to let her have, just to be rid of her. Sophie arrived 15 minutes late, wearing all black, sunglasses inside, flanked by her new boyfriend. Yep, the pizza delivery guy. Bold move. She didn't just walk in, she stormed in, like she was auditioning for a courtroom drama. The sunglasses came off with flair. She scowled at me like I had done something wrong. My lawyer whispered, "She's putting on a show." And oh, she was. As we sat before the judge, she interrupted constantly, claimed I was emotionally abusive, that I manipulated her. She actually cried, sobbing dramatically while looking back at her boyfriend for comfort. The judge, a woman in her 60s who had clearly seen everything, was not impressed. She asked, "Do you have any police reports, medical records, or documented evidence of abuse?" Sophie paused, sniffled, and said, "No, but I felt abused." The judge raised her eyebrows and simply said, "This is not a therapy session. This is court. Stick to facts." My lawyer presented everything cleanly: the restraining order, the false CPS report, her harassment of my workplace and friends. Sophie tried to object multiple times. "He's lying," she screamed at one point. The judge warned her, "One more outburst and you're out of this courtroom." Meanwhile, her boyfriend just sat there looking like he regretted every life decision that led him here. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor on every point. I got my divorce. She was denied any spousal support. The permanent no contact order remained in place. When the gavel came down, Sophie stood up and shouted, "You're going to regret this. You ruined my life." To which the judge calmly replied, "No, ma'am, you did that yourself." And just like that, it was over. I walked out of that courthouse feeling like I could finally breathe again. But there was one final moment that sticks with me. As I was leaving the courthouse steps, her boyfriend came up to me. I tensed, expecting something stupid. But instead, he looked at me, sighed, and said, "Dude, I didn't know. I thought she was single when we met. I'm sorry." I looked at him, nodded, and said, "You will be." Then I walked away. It's been 6 months since the divorce was finalized, 6 months since I last saw Sophie, 6 months of slowly stitching myself back together. The silence after the chaos was jarring. No screaming, no texts at 3 a.m., no fake apologies or emotional landmines. Just peace. Quiet. Space to think. At first, I didn't know what to do with it. I kept expecting the other shoe to drop: a surprise email, another bizarre accusation, a sudden knock on the door. But nothing came. Eventually, I realized she really was gone, and I finally had my life back. The first thing I did, I moved. New apartment, new city. Left the memories behind, started focusing on myself: therapy, gym, reading, reconnecting with friends I hadn't spoken to in years. I even went on a few dates, nothing serious, just trying to remember what it felt like to be wanted without games or manipulation. But this story isn't about revenge or rebound or even Sophie, really. It's about freedom, about waking up and not feeling like you're walking on eggshells, about realizing that love isn't supposed to feel like a hostage situation, about finally understanding that being alone is better than being with someone who makes you feel small. Sophie, I hear through the grapevine she broke up with the pizza guy. Shocker. Apparently, she tried to get back with another ex. That lasted 2 weeks. Classic. Do I hate her? No, I pity her because no matter where she goes, there she is, stuck with herself. I'm free. So here's my advice. If you're reading this and going through something similar, don't ignore the red flags. Trust your gut. Love isn't supposed to be confusing or painful or full of gaslighting. And if someone cheats on you, let them go. Don't chase the person who betrayed you. Thank them for showing you who they really are. You'll survive. I did. And someday soon, you'll wake up in a quiet apartment, make your own coffee, take a deep breath, and smile, because the storm is over. And peace, my friends, is so much better than chaos disguised as love. Thanks for reading.